great day to be together here. The day in which I assume the eclipse is still coming. And yet it's a beautiful day, is it not? As Rogers would say, it's a good, beautiful day in the neighborhood. And that neighborhood is that of Framingham. Let's pray. Gracious God, the creator and giver of life, thou who art the sustainer of life. We come here recognizing that indeed you are the God who is the giver of gifts to enhance life and to bring healing. We pause right now to celebrate 75 years. It is a time of thanksgiving for the Framingham Heart Study. We acknowledge that indeed, Lord, you stand behind all discoveries, all advancements, not only to prolong life, but to enhance the quality of life. And we give you thanks. Thank you that as we celebrate today, the successful multi-generational study that analyzes family patterns, cardiovascular diseases, and others. We thank you for over the 15,000 participants. We thank you for over 6,000 publications. We pray that in our celebration today, it might spur, yes, new scientific discoveries, that it might be transformative in its discoveries. We're thankful for 3 generations of participants who have shared their very self with us. We look forward to the next 75 years, always mindful that we look unto the hills from which cometh our help, for our help cometh from the maker of heaven and earth. So therefore, we celebrate today. Let the party begin.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Dr. Joanne Morabito. I'm one of the current PIs of the study and longtime Research Center Director. It's really a joy to be here on our 75th anniversary. The Heart Study is 75 years and going strong due to the extraordinary dedication of all the Framingham participants. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce U.S. Congresswoman Katherine Clark. Since 2016, Katherine Clark has proudly represented Massachusetts, including the thriving towns of Metro West. In the fall of 2022, Congresswoman Clark was elected by her colleagues to serve as the Democratic Whip, the second most senior position in the House Democratic Caucus. She previously served as the Assistant Speaker of the House, as Vice Chair of the House Democratic Caucus, and a senior member of the House Appropriations Committee. One of only 2 women to ever serve as whip, she currently has the distinction of being the highest-ranking woman in congressional leadership. Congresswoman Clark.
Thank you, Dr. Morabito, and good morning. I want to also thank and acknowledge our partners here today from Boston University and from NIH. We are especially delighted to be here with Dr. Bertinelli. Thank you for joining us. And to so many of our friends, Senate President Karen Spilka, Mayor Sasitsky, Reverend Lloyd, our state representatives, Louis Sousa and Gregoire, and Commissioner Goldstein, as well as many other local leaders. But above all, to everyone who has played a part in the Framingham Heart Study, whether as a researcher or a participant, whether you're here today or represented by loved ones, thank you. You are part of a critical contribution to healthcare not just to Framingham, not just to our country, but to all people. You have the rare distinction of making impacts of truly global proportions. And at such a time, as the gentleman just mentioned, of so much brutality and heartache around the world, you are proof of our capacity for doing good, for building community. And what could be more awe-inspiring than the task that you have taken on, forging the keys to a longer life, a healthier life, a better life, not for yourselves, but for everyone. That's the kind of hopeful selflessness that has lit our way, even in the darkest moments of history. When the NIH dedicated its new campus in 1940, war was raging around the globe. President Roosevelt came to the podium and told the crowd that the defense of America would require more than airplanes, ships, guns, and bombs. Because he said, we cannot be a healthy, strong nation. We cannot be a strong nation unless we are a healthy nation. And your mission remains fundamental. And it is a privilege to be your partner, to be a voice for you in Washington, and to fight for the resources you need. Last year, Democrats delivered billions in new funding for the NIH, ARPA-H, and CDC. And as we ramp up for 2025, we are going to keep sharing your stories of success, to keep making clear why your work has to be a priority. I am so proud to stand with you. I am so proud of the 75 years of groundbreaking research and grateful for your faith in the possibility of something better, the possibility of new knowledge and new cures. Thank you for believing in what can be and making it a reality. Thanks to be with you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Clark. I'm Dr. Daniel Levy, the Senior National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute investigator at the Framingham Heart Study. I joined the study 40 years ago, and I'm successor to Bill Castelli and Bill Cannell. I'd like to call out a few of our dignitaries from National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute and the National Institutes of Health who are here today. The new scientific director of the intramural program at National Heart, Lung, and Blood, Dr. Rick Child. And our project officers from the extramural program at National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, Drs. Yuling Hong, Mona Pugel, and Julie McCullough. Thank you for joining us. It's my honor to introduce our next speaker, NIH Director, Dr. Monica Bertagnoli. Dr. Bertagnoli is only the 17th director in the history of the National Institutes of Health. She's the first surgeon and only the second woman to hold that position. She previously served as director of the National Cancer Institute. Before that, she was a surgical oncologist at Harvard Medical School and made her home just a few miles from here. Throughout her career, she's been at the forefront of the field of clinical oncology and clinical trials in oncology. Her laboratory focused on understanding the genetic drivers of gastrointestinal cancers and the role of inflammation as a promoter of cancer. She's been a leader of many clinical trials in the oncology world, she is the daughter of Italian and French Basque immigrants. She grew up on a ranch in Wyoming and received her bachelor's degree from Princeton, attended medical school at University of Utah, and trained in surgery at Brigham and Women's Hospital here in Boston. She was a research fellow in oncology at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Director Bertagnoli.
So I just want to say thank you to Dr. Levy and to the PIs of the Framingham study, Dr. Morabito and Dr. O'Connor, for inviting me here today to say a few words. I'm delighted to join you all in commemorating the 75-year public health legacy of the Framingham Heart Study. Over 3 generations of participants, this groundbreaking study has transformed our understanding of heart disease, how to predict it, how to prevent it, and how to treat it. Much of what we've learned specifically from this study has become common knowledge. Americans, not just their doctors, now understand the risk factors for heart disease, among them high blood pressure, high cholesterol, smoking, physical inactivity, unhealthy diets, unhealthy weight. And just as important, we've also learned that we can change these risk factors, and if we do, it saves lives. I want to congratulate, commemorate, and express my great gratitude to all of the participants in the Framingham Heart Study. You have done this for us. From 1950 to 2019, the risk of dying from heart disease declined by nearly 75% in the United States, even without accounting for the older average age of our population now versus then. People used to think heart disease was inevitable for some of us as we aged, but the Framingham Heart Study showed that treatments like blood pressure medication could save lives and taught us all that we could do to reduce our risk factors by changing our diet and habits. The original cohort of study participants was 5,209 men and women enrolled beginning in 1948. Every 2 years, they came back for exams. The last participant in this original cohort passed away just last year at age 105. Amazing. The second cohort of 5,124 men and women included children of the original cohort. And the 1,640 participants who are still alive from this group have completed their 10th examination cycle. The third generation now includes grandchildren of the original cohort participants. 2 minority cohorts, called the Omni cohort, were added along the way, specifically enrolling Hispanic, Black, and Asian American participants. As director of the National Institutes of Health, I know we all owe an immense debt of gratitude to the participants of this study. I also want to acknowledge the long-standing commitment of the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute in supporting this study, and Boston University staff for their hard work over the years. But again, this study would not have continued without the loyalty and dedication of the study participants who've allowed researchers to see how to make the world a better place for us all. Framers of the Framingham study made 2 critical decisions early on that have helped their work endure. First, they enrolled women, which was rarely done in longitudinal studies at the time in 1948. In fact, all of the cohorts, including the original one, included slightly more women than men. And the framers also decided to recruit within families with the expectation that this would help promote cooperation and provide new sources of participants for the future. This also, though, had the side effect of creating a powerful generational database with the science of genetics advancing over the years. And this has allowed researchers to look at the biological factors that may predispose people to heart disease. So over time, the Framingham Heart Study has expanded beyond heart disease to study conditions such as stroke, dementia, and to examine health throughout the body. Recently, the study has investigated the impact of gut microbes on health, leveraged new genetic, omics, imaging, and machine learning and artificial intelligence tools to help expand our understanding of cardiovascular disease. I know that we will benefit from the Framingham Heart Study well into the future by gathering deep wells of information about study participants paired with detailed laboratory studies in research labs. Make no mistake, there is still so much for us to learn from you. I'd like to draw your attention to this slide. Please advance the slide one. Cardiology is better than the field of oncology, where for my own field, only 7% of the data that doctors and their patients use to make decisions every single day is supported by high-quality data from randomized controlled trials. But I'll call to your attention that even in cardiology, only 8.9% of recommendations are backed by evidence from multiple trials or meta-analysis or very large, well-conducted studies such as the Framingham Heart Study. Even among the most strongly recommended interventions, only 14% of the data used to guide the decisions made every day in clinic have a really robust level of evidence behind them. So, my goal as NIH director is to help connect more patients and their doctors to the evidence base that guides clinical decision-making. Doctors collect so much data on the front lines of healthcare. Our vision is to create a clinical trial network that expands the country and allows many more people to participate in research studies. There will always be a place for the incredibly detailed and attentive knowledge generation done in studies like the Framingham Heart Study. I also expect that we can move toward a system where knowledge generation becomes embedded in clinical practice everywhere, helping us move toward truly evidence-driven healthcare, helping everyone and leaving no one behind. The depth of information we gather from individuals throughout a national learning health study will never match the detail of the Framingham Heart Study. But hand in hand, studies with different approaches, this as well as others, will complement each other, deepening the well of understanding we draw from to improve health and save lives. For your transformative impact in bringing about this world for all of us, I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bertignoli. Another one of our dignitaries visiting from the National Institutes of Health is Dr. David Goff. Dr. Goff is Director of the Division of Cardiovascular Sciences of the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute and the National Institutes of Health. In this role, he leads a diverse team of scientists and administrators committed to turning discovery into cardiovascular health. Prior to joining the NHLBI, Dr. Goff served as Dean of the Colorado School of Public Health and Chair of the Department of Epidemiology and Prevention at Wake Forest School of Medicine. He received his MD degree from the University of North Carolina and a PhD from the University of Texas Houston School of Public Health. He trained in internal medicine at Baylor College of Medicine and received the American Heart Association's Award for Meritorious Achievement in 2017. Most notably, he received the NIH Director's Awards in 2021, 22, and 23 for contributions to the NIH response to the COVID pandemic and for efforts to reduce the burden of heart failure. Dr. Goff has published over 330 manuscripts, book chapters, and other scientific reports. The major focus of his research has been developing, testing, and implementing better strategies for promoting cardiovascular health. Dr. Goff.
Thank you, Dr. Levy, and thank you to Dr. Morabito and O'Connor, and to the organizers for this wonderful event on this spectacular day. It's really a privilege and for me to be here representing the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute and our director, Dr. Gary Gibbons, who sends his regrets that he could not be here today. I'm kind of glad he sent me instead. And I tell you, I'm humbled to be here because, as you heard, I trained as a clinician and a cardiovascular disease epidemiologist. And when I started my training in epidemiology, that was about a half a Framingham Heart Study ago. You can do the math on that, right? And at that time, Framingham was already world famous. You know, the Framingham Heart Study had been going on for several decades. It was a must-read for a graduate student in training. And, you know, it had already contributed much to our understanding of risk factors. You've heard a bit about that already, risk factors for heart disease and stroke. And Framingham, or more precisely, Dr. William Cannell, who was one of Dr. Levy's predecessors, had actually coined the concept of risk factors, really revolutionizing the whole approach to chronic disease epidemiology in the US and around the world. Now we commonly talk about risk factors, but in the early 1960s, this was a new thing. Everybody thought diseases came from infectious organisms, the germ theory of medicine. Dr. Cannell introduced a new way of thinking based on the Framingham Heart Study, and really the world changed as a result of that, and now we commonly speak to risk factors. Over the decades since then, Framingham is contributing to the knowledge of many conditions: heart, brain, lung, liver, kidneys, bones, blood, and well beyond. And how has all this been possible? Well, you heard earlier that enduring support from the National Institutes of Health, initially the National Heart Institute, subsequently the National Heart and Lung Institute, today the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. Framingham has been with us so long, our institutes had 3 different names. I was talking with Rick Childs earlier that, you know, maybe we're going to add sleep to the name because Framingham's also been contributing to our knowledge of sleep health with sleep studies of participants. Now, so the enduring support has been part of the reason for success. Also, the participation of literally thousands of researchers, whether faculty from BU, and thanks very much to Boston University for their long-term support, or from other places around the country. The staff who have been working within the Framingham Heart Study, students and trainees and fellows from really all over the world who come to Framingham to learn about human health, but most importantly to the thousands of participants, the residents of Framingham, who have really been partners and in truth owners of the Framingham Heart Study. It's to you that we all owe a large debt of gratitude for your contributions to knowledge about health that have changed the health of our country and really changed health around the world. As you heard earlier, you've made a global impact, and you've made that global impact in so many ways. I took a look at the medical literature over the weekend, and I found not just 6,000 publications, but let me see if I can find the number here. 288,531 references to the Framingham Heart Study. So after reviewing that literature very carefully over the weekend, I decided I would share with you my favorite contribution that you have made to the world of health, and that is the area of risk prediction. Now, disclaimer, I did a little work on risk prediction earlier in my career, so maybe I'm a little biased, but Framingham really started the whole concept of risk prediction, that we could predict who was at higher risk for developing a heart attack or a stroke or heart failure within the next 10 years or so. We could identify people who were apparently healthy, who had a high risk of disease in the short term, within a decade. And so they could be identified for more intensive therapy, whether that's lifestyle intervention or medical management of cholesterol or blood pressure. That changed the world of preventive medicine really forever. Now it's commonly used in practice, risk assessment in multiple different equations. Some people are using Framingham risk scores, others are using other risk scores in other countries. Now we deliver cholesterol-lowering medication and blood pressure-lowering medication in part based on the risk that someone has of developing heart disease or stroke in the years to come, largely attributable to the work done here in Framingham. And I'll just say this approach to preventive medicine contributed to that 75% reduction in cardiovascular disease mortality in the US that Dr. Bertagnolli spoke about earlier. And with a 75% reduction in risk of heart disease, you might think after 75 years of support for a place like the Framingham Heart Study, it might be time to celebrate, congratulate each other, and go home with our work done. Okay, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. We can celebrate, we can congratulate each other, but then let's rededicate ourselves to the task that remains ahead. You know, despite that 75% reduction in cardiovascular disease event rates, between about the mid-50s and 2010, we've seen no progress in cardiovascular disease mortality rates in the US since about 2010. And in the past several years, we've seen disturbing evidence of increases in mortality rates in the United States, and not just attributable to the pandemic, but attributable to actually heart disease rates going up again, including in young and middle-aged adults. It's quite disturbing. There's speculation that this may be due to the obesity and diabetes epidemics that our country has been experiencing over the past several decades. It's not completely clear why these rates have flattened and are now going back up again, but it's quite troubling. New times and new challenges call for new science. The important work that's going on here in Framingham, I would say, has never been more important than it is today. We need new knowledge about what's happening now with current generations so that we can do a better job, an even better job, of preventing heart disease and stroke and other medical problems over the decades to come. So Framingham has really been meeting the call. You've made your mark over more than 75 years. I'm sure you'll continue to answer that call. You've made such an important contribution to our understanding of health and our ability to promote health and prevent disease that I just want to close by saying congratulations, thank you, and I look forward to our continued partnership with you to address the health needs of the future. Thank you.
It is an absolute honor and delight to have Dr. April Carson, PI and Director of the Jackson Heart Study, here today with us. Dr. Carson is Professor of Medicine at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. Her research focuses broadly on the epidemiology of diabetes and its cardiovascular complications. She has extensive experience with several large observational cohort studies and has investigated a range of social, clinical, and lifestyle factors that contribute to disparities in diabetes and cardiovascular disease. A Georgia native, Dr. Carson completed her undergraduate studies in microbiology at the University of Georgia and her PhD in epidemiology at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In addition to her leadership role with the Jackson Heart Study, she maintains an active research portfolio funded by the National Institute of Health and is a professional member in the American Heart Association and American Diabetes Association. Dr. Carson.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation to come and be a part of this celebration. It truly is a celebration, so thank you to Drs. Morbido, Dr. O'Connor, and Dr. Levy for the invitation. As Dr. Goff alluded to, I was earlier about the timing of the Framingham Heart Study. I was thinking about when I was first exposed to the Framingham Heart Study. It wasn't as long ago as Dr. Goff's, but similarly, it's been a few decades. And it was when I started graduate school at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. We were assigned to read about this tremendous study that had really been the forefront of cardiovascular epidemiology and what we've learned about risk factors. At that time, we were a little nerdy, so we said, oh, Framingham coined risk factors? We're gonna call our intramural flag football team risk factors. So we're the risk factors. So we would have these conversations when we would have playing other teams, and they would be curious, what do you mean by risk factors? And we had this whole conversation about Framingham. So some 25 plus years later, it's an honor to be here to speak with you about not really the advances of Framingham. Dr. Goff and Dr. Bernelli really told the story of Framingham. But I want to speak a little bit more about the collaboration. So what many people do not know is that Framingham investigators have been tremendous in leading the forefront for other studies that have really been able to also advance science across the country. As the director of the Jackson Heart Study, I started this role roughly 2.5 years ago, and I have worked very closely with Framingham investigators. And they tell me about participant feedback, they tell me about staff feedback, as well as just areas that we should consider moving forward. And so we're learning from Framingham and continuing to learn. And it's not a one-way learning street, right? So we also communicate on things that we've learned in Jackson, Mississippi, right? And taking that relationship really is the true impact. We won't be able to measure that by publications and grants and those things, but really looking at the impact that Framingham has had in mentoring and developing investigators across the years, in sharing the experiences, sharing the feedback. I have not met a Framingham participant, but I've heard feedback that you provided to the staff that we take into consideration. And so it is truly what I consider an honor to be able to collaborate with so many investigators. Even now, looking out in the room, Dr. Benjamin has been a mentor, Dr. Nair, Dr. Herr Costa. We work on projects even now. It's funny, when I saw Dr. Herr Costa in the room, I said, oh, I see you in person, because everything's been on video. So it's felt like we've collaborated for many years, but just really the true exchange and partnership. So I commend Framingham, the investigators, the leadership, the tremendous staff, the participants, because really the impact goes far beyond the publications. It goes far beyond the science. It's really impacting the new development of investigators. It's impacting communities. And I don't want that to be not acknowledged in this space, because it is the science. The science matters, but tremendously the impact across all other areas can't be measured. And so I thank you. I look forward to continued collaborations. As a member of the advisory committee, we have all of these, we have meetings and we have discussions about where the science is going, what considerations we need to take into account. And those meetings are very helpful. And even now, you know, I look in Dr. Levy, I remember we had a call one Saturday morning, about a research project, and I didn't think we could do it in Jackson. And we spent that morning figuring out how we were going to be able to do it. And so now we're moving forward to get that project done. And there are similar efforts that we are doing across the board. So thank you to the investigators, thank you to the leadership, thank you to the staff, thank you to the participants. because, again, it was really the participants who set the foundation for the study. So congratulations, and I wish you all the best.
Hello, I'm Dr. George O'Connor. I'm currently one of the principal investigators of the study, together with Dr. Morabito. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Karen Antman. Dr. Antman is the provost of Boston University Medical Campus and the dean of BU's Trebanian and Avedisian School of Medicine. Dr. Antman is an oncologist and researcher who started her career at Harvard Brigham and Women's Hospital and Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where she did pioneering research to develop new treatments for sarcoma and mesothelioma, two kinds of cancer that are very difficult to treat. She subsequently held leadership positions at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons in New York, where she was the chief of hematology oncology and director of their comprehensive cancer center. She then served as the deputy director for translational and clinical sciences at the National Cancer Institute of the NIH before her recruitment as dean and provost at Boston University in 2005. Over the past 19 years, Dean Antman, as provost and dean, has given great support to the Framingham Heart Study and to Boston University faculty members who do research at the study, many of whom are here today. So please join me in welcoming my boss, Dean Karen Antman.
Thank you, Dr. O'Connor. It's a real pleasure to be with you today to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Framingham Heart Study. I would like to also add my thanks to a number of cohorts, and I'd like you to stand when I mention you so that at the end of this you can talk to the person sitting beside you about that role. I bet you'll be surprised. First, I'd like to thank the NIH and NHLBI who initiated the trial back in 1948 and continue to support it. You're supposed to be standing up if you're from the NIH, or so that everybody can see who you are and they can talk to you. I'd certainly like to thank our congressional and state representatives and the mayor of the town of Framingham and all of our local representatives as well. I know they're here. Our BU Framingham investigators and staff. And the many other investigators in the greater Boston area and around the world that support the study and have done ancillary research and collaborations. I know there's some of you here too, including our last speaker, Dr. Carson. People have said it takes a village to do something important, but in this case, it takes a small city to do anything with this kind of impact. And finally, and probably the people that we should be thanking the most are the 3 generations of Framingham Heart participants and 2 generations of Omni participants. Would you please stand? Thanks to you, researchers divined cardiac risk factors such as diabetes, hypertension, and elevated cholesterol. Thanks to you, deaths from heart disease have declined substantially. It's a little worrisome to hear from Dr. Goff that they might be going in the other direction. Thanks to you, the study had huge data repositories, whole genome sequencing, and scanned images of heart, lung, brain, bone, liver over time. And thanks to you, scientists can now comb through these data for 3 generations, and they can comb through the data for markers that we knew about a decade ago. But if a new marker is discovered, we have the data from a decade or two ago, and you can comb through the data and find out what the impact of that new marker was. So it's a very powerful database. And you've already heard about how collaborations with other cohorts around the United States and around the world can exponentially increase the power of these studies. Certainly, if something drops out of the Framingham Heart Study, we can collaborate with our other investigators that have cohorts to see whether or not it's true in their studies as well. So today, the study, as you've heard, uses the latest technological advances, dynamic exercise testing, imaging, high throughput profiling, and monitoring with smartphones. So the study has become much more sophisticated. We study Alzheimer's disease, happiness, osteoporosis, and a variety of other medical illnesses that you can do with a database like this. So Boston University stands strongly behind the Framingham Heart Study and its continued quest for groundbreaking science. And we look forward to the future of Framingham because we believe that the best discoveries are yet to come. Congratulations on 75 years of discovery. Thank you.
Okay, our U.S. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Edward Markey could not join us today, but they've sent some words to our participants via video.
It's great to join you today for the 75th anniversary of the Framingham Heart Study. What you have achieved is an incredible example of what can happen when people put their heads together to tackle big challenges. And you'll have to forgive this pun, but it is an issue very close to my heart. As some of you might know, my daddy had a heart attack when I was 12, and my mother and I spent our whole lives worrying about him. But it turned out it was my mother who died from advanced heart disease without ever being treated or even being diagnosed. Heart disease in women is chronically under-recognized and undertreated. And unfortunately, women are not alone in this. Too often, Black and brown people also face these same challenges. But your commitment to advancing the science of heart disease helps us close these gaps. And I just want to point out how amazing it is that this study has reached a third generation of participants. While you all continue this important work to better understand heart disease, I want you to know I'm fighting in Congress to protect funding for science and for research and make sure that our government keeps supporting trailblazing studies like the Framingham Heart Study. I'm also pushing to bring down prescription drug costs, to support community health centers, yes, and to ensure healthcare is accessible and affordable for everyone. So I want to thank the scientists from Boston University and the National Institutes of Health, the entire Framingham Heart Study cohort, and the families who support you for your remarkable commitment to our collective health. Your participation has truly transformed the world's understanding of heart disease. Your work clearly has community at the heart of it, and I am grateful to be a part of this fight with you. Congratulations on 75 years.
Hello to Boston University, members of the National Institutes of Health and the Framingham Heart Study, participants and families. I'm Senator Ed Markey. I wish I could be with you in person to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the remarkable Framingham Heart Study, but I'm so glad I can still express my profound gratitude for all that you have accomplished with this research. At its inception in 1948, the Framingham Heart Study included a cohort of 5,209 Framingham men and women, and since then it has expanded to become a multi-generational study of approximately 14,000 Framingham residents. It is now the longest-running cohort study in the history of biomedical research, and thanks to the participation of our Framingham residents, along with the scientists and staffs who ensured the continuation of the study, we have seen groundbreaking advancements in science and critical understanding of disease. Through this research, major risk factors for heart disease and stroke have been identified. Over time, the study strove to ensure that populations who have historically been underrepresented in scientific research, like women and minorities, were included, so that risk factors for our communities could be better understood. Given that heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States, nothing could be more essential. On this day of celebration, I want to recognize the Framingham Heart Study and all those who have contributed to it in their 75 years of unflinching dedication to the health of Massachusetts and the world. On behalf of a grateful community, Commonwealth, and everyone in our country and across the planet, I thank you for everything that you have done and everything that you're going to continue to do. Congratulations.
Well, it's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Massachusetts Senator and Senate President Karen Spilka. Senator Spilka represents the 2nd Middlesex and Norfolk District, which includes Framingham, and she serves all of us in Massachusetts in her role as Senate President. A graduate of Cornell University and Northeastern Law School, Senator Spilka has had a varied career as a social worker, a small business owner, and an attorney. As a legislator, she has been dedicated to the advancement of progressive social causes and pragmatic fiscal policy, and she has championed issues such as mental health, juvenile justice, and services for the elderly and disabled communities. She was one of the first legislators in the nation in favor of marriage equality. Senator Spilka has been working to decrease barriers to quality mental health care, as well as to increasing the mental health workforce pipeline. She and her husband raised their children in Ashland, where they've lived for 40 years. So please join me in welcoming Senate President Spilka.
Good day. It's great to be with you all today. This is truly a celebration for a world-renowned study, and it's amazing that it's right here, centered right here, this what I consider the heart of the state in Framingham. So all of you deserve a round of applause. I'd like to just take a moment to recognize my partners in government, Congresswoman Clark, Senators Markey and Warren, partners in the Massachusetts State House, Representatives Jack Patrick Lewis, Priscilla Sousa, Danielle Gregoire, Mayor Sizitsky, Commissioner Goldstein, the world-renowned doctors and medical professionals with us today, who lead us and contribute us to all of their work on the heart study. NIH Director Dr. Bertagnoli, it's great to have heard you and listened to all that you're doing. Dr. David Goff, Dr. April Carson, Provost Karen Antman, and her wonderful team at Boston University School of Medicine. I would like to also acknowledge John Galvani and the Friends of the Framingham Heart Study, and each and every one of the participants and the families that are with us today. It was an amazing thing to see practically this entire group of people here stand up when you were asked to stand. So it's a great day, I believe, for Framingham. As you know, Framingham is a special place for many, many reasons. To me, one of the hallmarks of this incredible city is the sense of community that we have here. People coming together to support one another, contribute to the greater good, and create a city where families can build a wonderful life and a terrific future. 75 years ago, it was that spirit of community that landed the project that we are celebrating today, right here in Framingham. When they put a call out for people to enroll, the people here stepped up for the greater good. The community as a whole raised its hand. And as a result is all the data and all the research that has contributed more to medicine than we can or will ever be able to quantify, and it keeps going. As Senator Warren mentioned, this is personal to her. It's personal to me. My dad died of a massive heart attack in the 70s. He was in his 50s. And in hearing the risk factors, I hate to say it, but at that point in time, he probably checked the box for almost every single risk factor. This study has saved and improved more lives than we could possibly know because of all of the people, all of the folks right here in Framingham. Those contributions to science are still happening today. The folks of Framingham stepped up, stood up, and they continue to show up. Not everybody realizes how generational this is. And not only is it generational, but each successive generation agrees, is committed to coming back for their half day, their day of testing, and not many people would do that. This is generational no matter where they are. They fly in, they drive in, bus in, they make sure they get here in order to have that testing done to be a part of the study, because it wasn't only the first generation that committed to this study, it's been the second generation, the third generation, and I anticipate the fourth and each successive generation as well. One of them, I have to acknowledge, is Dennis Giambetti, a member of my terrific team, who counts as one of many, many contributions to this great city and region. We are grateful to you, Dennis. Thank you so much. You stood up and your family continues to. And we're grateful to each and every person in this room, each and every family who continues to show up for the greater good, for the sense of community that Framingham stands for, because we are a commonwealth. We help each other. And you all have been contributing to the research and will continue to improve the health and humanity for years to come. It's truly an honor and a privilege to represent such a fantastic community that has done so much. So thank you again for every one of you participating here, and to the doctors, scientists, leaders who have come together today and contributed so very much. It's now my honor to present a joint resolution from the Massachusetts House and Senate to mark this great day, and I'd like to invite Representatives Jack Patrick Lewis, Priscilla Sousa, and Danielle Gregoire up as well. It's a resolution that is signed by all of us, myself as Framingham Senator, and then as Senate President and Speaker of the House, but I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to read it as well. Yes. Why don't you start and share it?
Whereas the Framingham Heart Study was established in 1948 and will celebrate its 75th anniversary this year, and
whereas the Framingham Heart Study was founded to identify the factors and characteristics that contribute to cardiovascular disease, and whereas the Framingham Heart Study began with 5,209 original participants from the city of Framingham, and at that time was one of the first long-term cohort studies of its kind, and
whereas today the Framingham Heart Study includes 15,447 participants and collaborates with the world's leading medical institutions, and
Whereas we resolve that the Massachusetts General Court hereby congratulates the Framingham Heart Study on the occasion of 75th anniversary of its establishment, and be it further resolved, a copy of this resolution was to the clerk of the Senate and the House, and as I said, it's signed by all of us, and we'd like to present it to all of you.
Thank you, Senate President Spilka and Representatives Gregoire, Lewis, and Souza. I'm Natalie Butler, and I'm the Research Regulatory Administrator at the Framingham Heart Study, and I'm here to introduce Tom Gracia, our next speaker. Tom is the chair of the Ethics Advisory Committee. He's also a study participant. Born into an Italian-American family at the end of World War II, Tom was the first in his family to graduate from college, actually Boston University. He eventually earned his doctorate in law. He excelled in sports, including baseball, track, and hockey, and is actually still playing hockey to this day. Tom has held a lot of roles and titles over the years, including those of factory worker, camp counselor, forester, manufacturing specialist, government operations specialist, helicopter pilot, EMT, writer, family man, father of 2 and grandfather of 3. It was a lot of fun doing research on Tom. He's actually still working as a corporate attorney, going on 50 years. He's still practicing today. But today we hear from him as a Framingham Heart Study participant. Let's give a warm welcome to Tom.
Thank you, Natalie, and good afternoon. As Natalie has rather charitably pointed out, my name is Tom Gracia, and I'm very happy to share some thoughts with you about this grand enterprise from a participant's perspective. I'm connected to the study in several ways, one of them being as a son-in-law of an original participant, as a member of the second generation of participants, as a graduate of Boston University, which is one of the study's parents, as if you will, along with the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and as a member of the Heart Studies Advisory Board, where I have both enjoyed and benefited from hanging with a group of bright, thoughtful, and caring colleagues. I assumed the chair of the advisory board from Dr. Jim Alderman this past January, and am delighted that he has agreed to remain a member, hopefully as long as it takes me to demonstrate some adequacy in that new position. I've been a Heart Study participant for some 50+ years, and would truly like to follow the footsteps of our before-mentioned longest living first-generation participant who passed away last September at the age of 105. As a participant, except for those people who live in places where facial recognition is used to keep track of the population, if you belong to the Framingham Heart Study, you may just be a member of one of the most observed group of people on the planet. There are, and we've had a few different numbers, but by my calculations, there are 15,448 of us. And that is almost 3 times that the population of the town, now the city of Framingham, had when our study got underway. It is important, I think, to point out that 15,448 people would not likely be happy to offer up their time, blood, bones, organs, bodily fluids, and perhaps their brains to the folks who are going to probe them and palpitate them, place stethoscopes on them here and there, x-ray them, vibrate them, take some samples, and then get them to partake in some tests and experiments, unless the people who run this program are absolutely the most sterling group of human beings that we could deal with, and they are. Our staff are superstars. They are dedicated, kind, caring people who are as skilled in their compassion as they are in their competency. And I include in this group the backroom tabulators, the keep in touch contact people, the people who support the people who do our research. This sterling group of people make the role of the research subjects, us, a comfortable one. And when you add that comfortableness to our awareness of the value of our study to the entire world, you can gain a clear understanding of why we are known for our dedication. As participants, we often hear that we are volunteers, but that term is perhaps a smidgen misleading, for we are not without our compensation. We get to learn a great deal about ourselves, a great deal about personal health, about good health habits and not so good health habits. And we get to pass that knowledge along to our families, to our children, to our grandchildren, and perhaps our great-grandchildren. So with that brief overview from a participant's side of this wonderful organization, let me leave you on behalf of all those 15,447 and me, the 48th, my sense of who we are, and I truly hope that I am accurately doing this on behalf of all participants. We are a large group of people who remain mostly unknown to one another, but collectively serve as an army of helpers who, when combined with the investigators, researchers, statisticians, advisors, and the hardworking people behind the scenes, are, in the field of human health, contributors to the science, education, behavioral changes, cures for disease, and the extension of people's lives. We are a force for good health, and we carry with us a collective sense of pride about what we do. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Tom. My name is Nicholas DePercio, and I represent the staff at the Framingham Heart Study. We're now coming to the close of our program, and we do have some people to thank for making today possible. As always, first and foremost, thank you to the Framingham Heart Study participants. Without you, there is no Framingham Heart Study. I would also like to thank the Friends of the Framingham Heart Study and the Boston University Trobanian and Avedisian School of Medicine for providing the financial support for today's event. In a special way, we must extend our sincere thanks to the City of Framingham and your esteemed Mayor, Mayor Charlie Sositsky. Nevins Hall is the ideal hall for this event, and it's typically not used for events of this size during the work week. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for making the exception, and thank you for hosting us today. I would also like to thank some members of your staff, especially Ms. Susan Petroni, Ms. Sandra Huey, Mr. Brendan Wilkinson, Sergeant Curtis, and the rest of the Framingham Police and Fire Departments. Mr. Mayor, if you would join us on stage. So Mayor Sositsky visited the Framingham Heart Study Research Center in November, bearing a citation honoring 75 years of the Framingham Heart Study. Unfortunately, it was a quiet evening. There was only a handful of us there to receive that honor that night. And this honor is yours. It belongs to the participants, the staff, the faculty, leaders at Boston University, and the NIH. So with a proper audience, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. It's my honor and pleasure to have you here today to celebrate your 75th anniversary. It's amazing how back in 1948, nobody or very few people had any idea what the cause of heart disease was. And now, 75 years later, we have all this information that has saved many, many lives. And hopefully, when we come back here in 25 years to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Heart Study, someone will tell me that the brownie I had with my coffee this morning was actually healthy.
So we'll wait for that. But anyway, it's my honor to welcome you all, and you do such wonderful work. We appreciate everything you do, and we're so proud that it's called the Framingham Heart Study. So thank you very much. Okay. That is the actual proclamation that we're holding on the screen. We're showing on the screen. I'm not going to read it.